Hey everybody, today I'm going to be showing you how super easy it is to install a RackBoss rack and pinion on this Can-Am Maverick 1000. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is remove both front wheels and tires. Then we're going to remove our cotter pin from our tie rod hardware. We're going to get an 18mm wrench and socket. Then remove the tie rod from the knuckle. Then we're going to go through and remove this shield right here. There's going to be two 10mm bolts and two push pins. Once the hardware is removed, go ahead and remove the shield. Then we're going to repeat all these steps for the opposite side. Now we're on the driver's side. We're going to remove the bolt securing the shaft from the power steering unit to the rack and pinion. Now we're going to start removing the rack from the machine. There's going to be 3 long bolts on the driver's side and then 2 short bolts on the passenger side. The easiest way I found to get to the nuts is if you have a swivel-headed wrench, you can stick it in here and kind of angle it around, get it on the nut side. You can use a non-adjustable, it's just a little bit more difficult. Now that all our hardware is removed from our rack, we're going to go ahead and separate it from the splines on the steering shaft. Then we're just going to pull it right out of the machine. Sometimes it'll do this right here, where it stays on the rack and pinion shaft instead of on the portion that is going to be on the power steering unit. So all we're going to do is just knock this off here, and then we can reinstall it on our new one. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install our inner ball and socket to each of the rack shafts. You want to make sure that you apply a good amount of Loctite. We're just going to thread them right in there. And we're just going to go ahead and fully tighten them. So once we have them fully tightened, we're going to go ahead and make sure that our rack is centered. We're going to do that by taking a rag, laying over the splines of the rack. And we're going to take a pair of vice grips. We're going to turn the rack all the way to one way, as far as it'll go. And we're going to take a measuring scale. We're going to measure from the face of the rack right here to the face of the inner ball and socket. So it's right at 75mm. So what we're going to do is divide that 75 by 2, and then we're going to apply that adjustment to each side. So we need to be right at 37.5, and that's exactly where we're at. So we're going to go over here to the opposite side. We're going to take a measurement as well. Looks like we're at 37.5 on this opposite side. We're going to take a paint marker, and we're going to mark the rack and pinion so we know where our center line is. We're going to mark it from the housing all the way up to the shaft. I like to put it out here so it's in a good spot where you can see it, and that way we always know where center is on this rack. So now what we're going to do, we're going to let this dry, and then we're going to get it installed in the machine. So now that we have our rack centered, we got our inner ball and sockets fully tightened, we're going to go ahead and install our new heavy-duty RackBoss rack and pinion into the machine. Once we have our rack slid into place, we're going to come back inside the machine. Make sure that our steering wheel is perfectly straight. Then we're going to go ahead and install the rack to the steering shaft, making sure that our line is still lined up, showing that we are centered. So then we're just going to slide it right on to our steering shaft here. Then we're going to get our new hardware kit for our rack and pinion. It's going to come with 3 new long bolts and 2 new short bolts. And they're going to install exactly the same as the factory ones came out. Now that we have our rack fully tightened, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the bolts that are securing the shafts to the power steering motor and the rack and pinion. Next, we're gonna grab both of our boots, and we're gonna be installing this boot onto the passenger side. We're gonna come over here to the inner ball and socket, remove the jam nut, and we're gonna take our boot, slide it right up here, slide it over the rack and pinion. And to get it to fully seat, sometimes you gotta put some force on it and spin it. Once you have the boot in place, take one of the provided zip ties to secure it. Then we're gonna thread our tie rod onto the inner ball and socket, and the checkered side needs to be facing away from the machine. Then we're gonna take our heavy duty Heim joint style tie rod in and install our jam nut to it. Then we're gonna thread the outer tie rod into the tie rod. Just remember it is left-hand thread. We're gonna lay our tie rod over where it's gonna be mounting at. Then we're gonna grab both of our misalignment bushings. We're gonna install one on the bottom side of the Heim as well as the top. Then we're gonna grab our bolt. We're gonna slide it right through the Heim joint, right into the knuckle. And we're gonna install our castle nut. We've got our wheels and tires on our machine, and we got it sat back down on the ground. Now we're gonna roll the suspension out by pushing the machine back and forth. We got Corey here helping us today. 3 or 4 times is good enough. After you've done it, you want to go over here and you want to make sure that your wheel is straight. Then what we're going to do, we're going to measure from the center line to center line on the front of the tire. Looks like we're right at 54.5 on the front side of the tire. Now we're going to do the same exact thing on the back side, and it looks like we're right at 54.5 as well. So the awesome thing about SuperATV's heavy duty tie rods is that they're double adjustable. So if you did have to adjust your toe, whether it was in or out, positive or negative, all you'd have to do is make sure both your jam nuts are loose, grab a hold of the tie rod and spin it until your measurement's the same from side to side. Once you have your toe set, you're gonna go through, tighten all your jam nuts, make sure all your hardware is fully tightened, and that's how super easy it is to install SuperATV's heavy duty RackBoss rack and pinion and heavy duty tie rods. For more information on our rack or tie rods, feel free to give us a call at 855-743-3427 or check us out online at superatv.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.